There we go. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So off air, Erin and I had a little brief discussion, and we just kind of realized that we haven't spoken in some time. Like we've had like these virtual coffees, and we spoke before, and this is like the first time since almost like a year. It feels like that we've actually had a one-on-one conversation. So this is going to be very interesting. We're going to dive into a lot of different things, more so about the spiritual aspect and coaching. Like how do these two things really tie together? And I think like you are a specialist when it comes down to that. So people that are listening to the episode know I like to give whoever I'm interviewing a particular nickname. So your nickname is going to be the Redefined Boss. Out of all the keywords and out of all the things that you say and talk about, I think that is the one word that defines you, redefining.
I love that. Love it.
I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about you, and what would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, for sure. So really, in a nutshell, my story is an ambitious go-getter gets lost on her way to the top because the top is the only place she ever goes. She finds Jesus and he says, hold up, why don't you let me drive? And you hold this map, the Bible. And then after much lessons and pruning and molding, he says, now I want you to go teach this to my ambitious go-getter daughters. So I spent 30 years in corporate America. I had a multi-level marketing business, which I still have for 13 years. And 4 years into that business journey, after I'd spent a lifetime of driving, striving, and achievement chasing, thinking that money would be my savior because I grew up with very little, I hit a wall. And, I woke up and I had a great house and a luxury car. We were taking trips. We had all the outward symbols of success, but inwardly, I was unfulfilled. I was empty, and I was constantly running and working and all into the hustle. And when I woke up that October day in 2014, I called a mentor expecting she would say, you just have to keep doing, you just have to keep working, you just have to do more. And she surprised me because she said, you were not made to work this way. You were not made to carry all of this. Do you know Jesus? And I said, of course I do, which I totally did not. I believed in God, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Christ. And why that matters is because I was wrapping my identity in achievement and titles and all the things. And I was not made to wrap my identity in that, because when those things go up and down, where are we left? Right? Mm-hmm. Struggling. So that in a nutshell is my story. And so from that, I started coaching one-on-one. I started group coaching women just like me, followers of Christ who had very successful 6- and 7-figure businesses, who desired to scale, who desired to refine, but knew they could not keep up the self-reliant overachiever pace that they had been going at for so long. So out of that came the coaching. Out of that came my podcast, Redefining Hustle, Pursuing Success as a Christian Woman, my book, Pursuing Success God's Way, and really working in my zone of genius. This was not my plan. This was not how I would have selected to go forward in my future, but it is most certainly the most peaceful and joyful I've been doing any work ever in my life.
Wow. So, I mean, that's a lot for us to kind of unpack. And I kind of want to shake things up a little bit. I want to crack some eggs open, right?
Yeah.
How do you go from getting a BA in sociology and government into what you became today? Like those are two different hemispheres, and obviously there's a middle gap that you defined, but what's the conversion between those two in the early days?
Well, early on, I thought I would go to law school, or I thought I would work for a think tank like the Brookings Institute or something like that and do research or whatever, because when you think sociology, you think like environment and people, right? But as I started to pursue those things out of college, I thought that I'm a people person. So sitting and doing research was not going to be my thing. Going to school more was not going to be my thing, as I simply didn't have the funds for it. So really, I got into sales. Mm-hmm. And that was a very natural transition for me because I love to talk. I love people. I love solving problems. And so that sales career, where I started at like the Macy's at Springfield Mall in Virginia, that took me into various sales and project management and sales director roles, mostly working for companies that provided services to large pharmaceutical companies. And along the way, as I progressed, I began to lead teams. I began to coach other people that were on my teams. And so I had been doing what I'm doing, but in a different capacity for a long time.
So let's continue to break some eggs, right? So, I mean, that kind of establishes that journey, but then you took a
Yeah.
fork in the road and then you kind of ended up in hospitality and you ended up as administrative manager at Hyatt Hotel. So I want you to kind of like, how did that kind of fit into the equation?
Oh, wow. That was very, very early on in my world. So I had graduated college, got a job with a small intelligence firm where I was an admin. And I'm going to be very raw with you.
Mhm.
I was fired because I wouldn't sleep with my boss. It was a 3-person office. Unbeknownst to me, my colleague was already doing that. And I turned it down. And so I got fired and I had to find a job quickly. And what, was coming up on the radar were admin jobs. And so took that detour into hospitality. Again, people, solving problems, all of those pieces was a very natural fit. And then that led into other administrative and project management roles through the American College of Cardiology, and then finally into medical communications, where I started to get into sales and really project direction.
Hmm. I mean, obviously it's unfortunate you had to deal with that, but there was some bright side in that
Yeah.
journey of time. Isn't that when
Yeah.
you met your husband, Brian, like right around that time?
Yeah. So Brian and I met just before I started at Hyatt. We are the epitome of, I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar when I met you, the Human League song. Yeah. So it was right around that time. It was 91. And shortly thereafter started with Hyatt and started to build what I thought the future would look like in a 9 to 5 stable, secure, or so we think, right? Environment.
Hmm. So, I mean, you met him during that time. Was it more so like the polar opposite? Because I mean, I remember seeing something on Facebook. It's like, you post, you build content, and he's kind of like social media hidden. Like he doesn't do social media. So I want you to kind of talk about like how does that dynamic work in a household?
Yes. Yeah, it is very different. So from a spiritual temperament perspective, my husband is a melancholy. He's not a people person.
Mhm.
He is a process person. He is a former law enforcement officer, former private investigator. So very insular, very, very much introverted. And I am the extrovert, right? So it is a polar opposites attract situation. I have always been the people person. I'm the one that makes the connections. I'm the one that makes the plans with other couples and all those pieces. And it's been a really interesting transition because going into sales, sometimes that can be really unpredictable. Certainly owning your own business can be, unpredictable and not as stable income. But he is very happy doing the work that he does with the federal government
Mhm.
in background security and that sort of thing. And so we balance each other very well
Mhm.
in that kind of a relationship and in the work that we've done throughout our marriage of almost 30 years.
Wow. So I mean, I'm building up like these Lego pieces to kind of like
Yeah.
illustrate your story, right? So all these things are happening. You guys have been married for a long period of time. You're polar opposites, and then you brought up the key word several different times since we've been on this show about network marketing. And anyone that knows anything about network marketing, some people have bad taste, some people
Yeah.
have great taste,
Yeah.
some people love it, some people don't understand it. And considering that you're a people person and your husband's not, what was it like stepping into the house and saying, "Hey, I'm doing network marketing"? Like,
Yeah.
what was that conversation like?
Yeah, well, it's important to share that how I came across that. I had a direct sales business originally in like 99 to 2007, and it was a side thing. It was never going to be like my future, but I was going from south of Baltimore to New Jersey on the train all the time in my full-time gig at the time. And I was always posting on Facebook, like I'm on the train again and the train is delayed. And I just was like killing myself traveling 70% of the time for this job. And a friend of mine reached out with this opportunity in network marketing. I immediately said no. But the more that I learned about the industry and the more that I understood what opportunity it could provide me to eventually replace my then primary breadwinner income, I remember the initial conversations and Brian saying like, do not quit your job to do this. Like, please do not quit your job to do this. And at first I didn't. And I did, however, put my usual tenacity and drive into building that business alongside of my full-time job. So I was doing both for a long time. And quite frankly, putting my family on the back burner because, again, I was chasing money. Money was going to be my savior. I needed to be at the top. I needed to have the big titles. So I will say, like, I really sort of disrespected what he asked me to do. And in some circles, SA, that would be like, well, of course, you're a strong, independent woman. You need to go do that. But not respecting your spouse means you're not working in partnership. And so there was a lot of that sort of bumping heads for a while until he really started to see the success that was coming from it. And then I think he softened on it a little bit, but I wouldn't say that he ever was like, yeah, go make this a career.
So let's just keep going down this journey. So in this equation, where does Elaine's gifts fall into this time frame?
So in the company that I was part of in network marketing, there were so many people who had created these incredible foundations, whether it was building orphanages in Africa or advocating for clean water and those kinds of things. And I was really feeling around 2016 or so that I wanted to give back in a big way. And so how could I create something that would not only allow me to use a good portion of my income to give, but to whom would I give? So I was raised by a single mom. We lost my mom and she was 58 in 2003 when we lost her very suddenly to acute myeloid leukemia. And I thought my mom's dream would have been for all four of her children to go to college and for her to have been able to pay for that. And that never happened. I was the only one that was able to go to college, mostly funded by financial aid and student loans. And so I thought, what if I could create a scholarship fund for the children of single moms? So high school seniors being raised by a single mom for whom even $1,000 could make a tremendous difference. And so Elaine's Gift was born in 2016. But as God guides you, some things don't always go in the timing that you want. So this year in 2023, we gave our first two scholarships. So we were able to give a $5,000 scholarship to a gentleman, child of a single mom, and then give a $1,500 scholarship to a young woman, again, child of a single mom. And those two scholarships made a tremendous difference for their first year of college.
So all these different things, and again, I'm layering it up so that the listener can understand when we talk about ambition,
Yeah,
different levels of ambition, right?
Amen.
And again, I think you are the epitome of that definition, right? You've done all these different things, you've poured yourself into it, and then pretty much like something happened.
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of talk about like all these different things that happen, and essentially you're burning the candlestick on both ends, and you're making a lot of achievements. Earlier you said that it's kind of push and pull with the family life. What was the breaking point for you to make the conversion?
There were two things. The first breaking point was in 2014, I had drained my 401k. Let me back up. In 2012, I was let go from my corporate job very suddenly. I was on par to get a six-figure bonus in February of 2013. So when I got let go in November of 2012, that ensued a massive wrongful termination lawsuit. And that six-figure bonus was going to be my runway to make the exit from corporate and go full-time with my network marketing business. But that didn't happen because I ended up getting let go and I didn't get the bonus. And then we ended up in this lawsuit. So in 2014, found ourselves over $100,000 in debt, 50% of which was because we drained my 401k to keep us afloat. And we ended up with a huge tax bill. So that point right there was tremendously difficult for our marriage, for our children, because we didn't want anybody to know that we weren't making ends meet, right? Even though I was burning the candle at both ends. So that was one piece of it. And then the second piece of it was, how could I have had all of the success and now I'm not making that same amount of money? How could I be speaking on stages, but I'm so unfulfilled? How could I be questioning that I'm successful when from the outside looking in, I was? Those two pieces are really what came together on that fateful day of October 2014 and led to the conversation with my mentor, because I thought I must be doing something wrong. I must not want it badly enough. I'm not working hard enough. Like, what is the situation that is stopping me from feeling fulfilled like I should feel? And that's where everything came to a head right there.
So like this time travel back. I mean, obviously that was your awakening moment, right? I want you to kind of talk about your adolescence. Like what kind of kid were you growing up? Like what kind of household did you grow up in? Were you super ambitious as a child, or is that something that you kind of became more competitive as you got older?
Oh no, I was always super ambitious. I am the oldest of four, and growing up with a single mom, I had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders to help care for my sisters and brother, because mom was working multiple jobs and dad was not involved. And so always ambitious, always looking for the next way to get my first job and find the next job, always looking to be more important, because I felt, because we were poor, that I wasn't important, that I was going to struggle my whole life if I didn't get myself out of that. So I was always willing to go babysit more, to help my mom deliver papers, to find that first job, because to me, that was the only thing that was going to save me. That was the only thing that was going to change my trajectory. And I like to think, although my siblings would argue, that as the oldest of four, of course I was the leader. Of course I needed to be the one that they followed. So ambition was part of my life. I was made ambitious. My temperament is an ambitious temperament. And it is clear to me that God really gave me the gifts to stick to it and go get it and all of those pieces. But I tended to take that to the extreme and get into the burnout and the overachievement in ways that were not sustainable. So absolutely, probably from birth, I've been ambitious.
So let's talk about the entrepreneurial side. I mean, you alluded to your mom was delivering papers amongst other things. Did you see like the entrepreneurial hustle for her to maintain a household of four kids? And that's how you kind of got into entrepreneurism?
Yeah, it's funny because I very specifically remember my mom saying when I got a commission job at Macy's, she was like, a commission job is not the way to go. Like owning a business or being on 100% commission, you don't have stability. Don't do that. So I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. It wasn't that she didn't believe in me, but from her experience, she had tried everything to be able to support us. So I can look back and see that my mom's view of entrepreneurship, based on what she knew at the time, was not real positive. It hadn't worked for her, right? So I don't believe that I was bitten by the entrepreneur bug until really I was maybe 35, 40 years old, because it was around that time that I began to understand that if I wanted to have more quality time with my family and replace the income I was making, I was going to have to go out on my own somehow. Mm-hmm. I had certainly people in my circle who were entrepreneurs, but I don't come from a background of entrepreneurs. I come from a background of stable government employees, right? The stability of teachers. So there was no one in my family who was doing the entrepreneur thing. And if they were, I'm quite certain that my parents or my extended family probably sort of scoffed that, because stability was really important.
So pulling from everything that you spoke about for like the last 20 minutes, it kind of leads me to one of your courses. And the title of that course is Hustle with Your Heart, right? Everything that you've been talking about, like you could hear the hustle.
Yeah.
And you definitely see the passion. I want you to kind of depict what's included in that course and what does it actually help someone do?
Yeah. After my acceptance of Jesus in 2014, the way I began to view and do business changed significantly. I was still doing the work, but I was doing it from a place of heart. I was aligning my goals, my strategy, etc., to God's truth. That had not been in my vernacular before, right? So through that, what I began to understand is, as entrepreneurs who follow Christ, we are not called to be constantly working. We are not called to do business as usual, as I would say it. We are not called to make it happen and be a boss babe and all of those pieces. We are called to a mission in the marketplace, and our business is a vehicle for impacting people, for serving people. That doesn't mean you can't go earn money, but you come at it from a place of intention and purpose and joy and calm and peace. And so Hustle with Heart was the message really that the Holy Spirit had given me to say, I want you to go help entrepreneurs align their results to God's truth, heart. And that then connected to writing my book, Pursuing Success God's Way. The course is based on that book. And what it is meant to do is to give people a practical guide to how do I integrate my faith in business? How do I allow God to lead? How do I allow God to define me, not my achievements, and allow him to direct me, not just hold on so tightly to my plan? How do I take the right action at the right time? And then how do I look at failure as learning, as development, so that I get back up and I keep going with what he's taught me? That is what the course gives to those who have had success, but they want to do it differently going forward. They want to do it from a place of clarity, serenity, and fulfillment. And that course walks them through the how-to of all of that.
So let's keep going down that road. I mean, there's another keyword that's used multiple times on your website, and it's even kind of based upon a service structure, rooted.
Mm.
So I want you to kind of okay, now we understand what the course is. We understand the hustle. We understand your ambition. We understand your path. Where does rooted stand in this equation?
Well, in Psalm 1, verses 2 and 3, it tells us that, he who meditates on God's word day and night is planted like a tree beside the river, but its leaves do not wither. It's unaffected by the storms, and it produces its fruit in its season. So it is rooted in him. When I started coaching, I was mainly doing one-on-one coaching. And then I had some women come to me who weren't quite ready for one-on-one, but they wanted a Christian community because their faith family didn't understand what it meant to be an entrepreneur, and their business tribe didn't understand what it meant to actually rely on God in business. So they wanted a community where they felt like they could connect, where they belonged, where there were other Christian women who held them accountable for doing the work in their business, but who also provided discernment from their faith experience. And so out of that grew the Rooted group coaching membership. And I called it Rooted because that was the point. They wanted to be rooted together. They wanted to be rooted in their faith and in their business at the same time. And that goes through everything that I do, because it is only when we're rooted in him and understanding that our power, our nourishment, our energy, our strength, everything is provided by him, that we're not meant to be so self-reliant, that we're meant to be rooted. And that leads us to a whole different level of success in our business.
And I think it's phenomenal because, with a podcast, both of us have podcasts. You have opportunity to speak to multiple different people, and multiple different people, they may kind of know what their avatars are. They may have multiple avatars, but your avatar falls into just 3 words, right? I mean, ambition, Christian, and women, point blank, period. Yeah. And as long as they fit into that ecosystem, they are your people and you're their people. So I want you to kind of talk about, most people, they're kind of scared to niche down that far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How has that helped you to grow and prosper, being that you know your core niche and you are your core niche?
Yeah. I agree with you. I think a lot of business owners are afraid to niche down because they really do want to serve as many people as possible, but there's a little bit of scarcity thinking around that, because if I niche down, what about all these other people? And what I have seen in my own business and in others is when you niche down, it becomes crystal clear who you're serving, what they need, and how you serve them. It's like everything else falls away and you become very focused in who that audience is. That was really important to me, because at the beginning of my business, I thought, I'm going to serve everyone of faith. Well, what that meant was anybody can call faith anything. Anybody can call anything God. But in my scarcity thinking, I didn't want to niche down. But every time someone would show up who wanted to coach with me, which, by the way, 90% of my coaching clients are referred to me or they hear me on a podcast. So it's not like I went out to get them, right? God brought them. every time he was showing me, no, this is who I want you to serve. This is who I want you to serve. And so having spent, 46 years of my life, essay, outside of God's will and trying to do it all my way and muscle through it, and having lived and felt what that felt like, and then the opposite of the peace of being obedient to his will, for me, that niching down became obedience. And here's how it's impacted my business. It is very clear more often than not who is not my person. It is also very clear to people that I am not the right fit for them. So that immediately shrinks the pool, right? Then those who do find me are able to go through that search, and they're able to clear the fog and understand, is she the person for me? What she's saying makes sense to me. I'd like to have more conversation with her. And then therefore, I'm not having a discovery call with everyone, right? The people I'm having the discovery call are very clear that I could be a fit for them. Here's what I do, and here's what I charge. It has taken the pressure off of me of having to be everywhere. It has taken the pressure off of me of having to be on every single social media platform. It has become clear to me that, like I said earlier, most of the people I work with are referred to me or they hear me on podcasts. And therefore, I'm able to focus my effort on my podcast and being on podcasts instead of trying to throw spaghetti everywhere and see what sticks. So it has grown. It has also allowed me to really increase my pricing, because the women that I'm serving are their businesses are much bigger than where I was going originally. And they expect to pay a certain amount to have a coach that gives them the attention that I give them. So I know that it can be very scary to niche down, but it is so freeing. It is so empowering, because you know exactly who you're serving and why.
Which kind of leads me to, you guys are empty nesters, right? Which means you at least you had two kids, two kids that I've kind of figured out that you have, right? And I particularly want to talk about your purple-haired daughter, right? I want you to kind of talk about her, being that you are such an individual that's powerful, that's woman empowerment, that's religious, that's ambitious. How has growing up in that environment helped her to become who she is today?
Yeah. I would say, both of my daughters learned work ethic for sure. Both of my daughters learned very early on, do what you love. My older daughter is like my husband, like the stable environment. I know I want a stable income. I want to know that I'm 9 to 5, like that. And that's awesome. And she and her sister are polar opposites. My younger daughter, Cameron, with her lavender hair, she is my artist. She is my actor. And what she had, I believe both of them have this, but they've been brought up in an environment that they know that they're loved. They also know that we're not coddling. They know that we have an expectation that they will be responsible human beings, probably a little on the OCD side of way they clean up and they organize things. But I believe for Cameron, who, by the way, is not a believer, she's not sure, there even is a God. But what she knows is that she's loved regardless. And I think sometimes that gives her the space to try and mess up and fail forward. As an actor, she has a lot of rejection, obviously, but she knows to her core that we love her, and that I was never afraid to take chances and to take risks, and therefore she is not. And having seen what I've modeled, I believe that while it can be scary to step out and do new things and try new things and that sort of piece, that she's not afraid to walk into an audition. She's not afraid to, walk into a place and have a conversation about a job or whatever, because she has a level of confidence that she knows that doesn't define her. And if that's the gift that my journey has provided for my girls, that's the best gift that my learnings could have provided.
So let's say we have an opportunity to talk to both kids, right?
Yeah.
And we give kid A opportunity to define you in three words, and kid B an opportunity to define you in 3 words. Collectively, what would those 6 words be to identify you?
The 6 words: real, faith, ambitious, focused. That's 4, right? um Opportunity, because I'm always looking for, what's the next opportunity and what does that look like? And steadfast.
Mm. Definitely powerful insight to who you are.
Yeah.
So like this spinning around, like, so now you're empty nesters, right? But are you really empty nesters considering that, you have like a white poodle and I think the other dog is Millie? Like they're kind of like your little kids. Like how do they kind of, what's your day-to-day look like considering that
Yeah.
you these 2 pups, considering that you're empty nester, but you're really not?
Right. So Millie and Maisie are our grand dogs. Those are our older daughter's dogs. So sometimes we do have them. We did have 2 Bichons. Unfortunately, we put one down in October of 2021, and then the other down in January 2022. So we really, really were empty nesters until Labor Day. Because on Labor Day, my daughters and I went and picked up our new Bernedoodle puppy. His name is Rory, like Rory McIlroy, because Rory McIlroy is one of our favorite family. We're family fans of his golf. So now we're not empty nest. And it's fascinating, SA, because when we didn't have the dogs, we're like, there's so much freedom. We can go where we want. We could spend the night at our best friend's house and they can come to our house and all the things. But I could sense that my husband was just a little bit lonely for a buddy, which is why we brought Rory home. So Rory is now 15 weeks. He had his first haircut today. And so we're not really empty nest anymore, but I will say just empty nest in general. It's very different when suddenly you're not taking kids everywhere. You're not trying to organize all the schedules, and there's freedom, but then there's also like, it's kind of uncomfortable because that's been your mode of operation for, 18 years. And that's probably, it's funny because I started my coaching business in 2018, just as Cameron, our youngest, was going to college. And I really believe that, God wanted us to do something new, to be in a new season of empty nest. But it's been beautiful because, now we go out and we have fun and we do all the adult things that we did before we had kids.
Gotcha. So talking about like empty nesters and kind of building onto the story a little bit more, in your spirituality, I would think like there's different dimensions. Like some people are really grounded, and because of that, they like to live in mountains, right? Some people are more so kind of free spirited and kind of want to live up in the clouds. But you're kind of a water baby. So I want you to kind of to talk about like what does that really do for you, considering that you live so close to the water and that you're in love with the beach? How does that help you with coaching, being that you're connected to the earth on a day-to-day basis like that?
Yeah. When we were little, my mom would pile us into her 2-door Subaru on a Sunday morning at 5 a.m. and drive us to Ocean City, Maryland. It was a 3-hour drive, and we'd spend the day there. And then we'd come home, bellies full, sunburned, and sand all over us. So grew up going to the beach all the time, grew up swimming in the Chesapeake Bay. So it has always been my dream to live near the water. We are absolutely water lovers. We love a good, Caribbean island vacation. So this place came about when we downsized in 2018 and we sold our house and we moved about 20 miles north to where we are in a beach town. And we came across this rental, and it has a beautiful view. Like I can see the bay right now from my window. And I thought, how is it that we could actually be waterfront after all the financial challenge that, we had been through and all the pieces? But I truly know that this was a gift. This was such a gift from God. And so being connected to the water, the water always changes. Some days it's super calm like it is right now. And some days there are huge waves. And that's what life is like. And that's what business is like. And it's about, where are we anchored? Being here on the water anchors me. It allows me to see the seasons change in a very different way. It allows me to see God's creation every single day and to not take that for granted. And how that translates into the work that I do is I believe it gives me a deeper sense of calm. It reminds me of scripture. It reminds me that we're all part of creation. It reminds me that we're all made on purpose for a purpose, and the world needs what we have to offer. So bringing that forward in my coaching is important to me. It also is not too shabby when I want to host a retreat of my clients either, because I'm right here on the water.
Nice. So let's play devil's advocate with that, right? I mean, obviously, have you seen the movie from Disney recently came out called Elements? And it's about,
I haven't, but I know about it.
Okay, so I want you to think about it from this standpoint. With your clients, there are different levels of elements, right? Some of them are water like you, some of them are on the same page, but every once in a while, you probably get somebody that's a little bit spicy, a little bit hot, a little bit on the higher spectrum, right? How does that kind of work with that type of individual, being that they could essentially be controlling or be negative, but they're spiritual, right? They're ambitious. They're also women. So how do you kind of deal with that and use like your source of water to kind of calm those seas?
Yeah, it's funny because when I first started coaching and I was kind of taking anybody that wanted to coach with me, I had far more fiery people than since I've niched. So remember that, any listeners, right? Because when you get clear on who that niche is, like it becomes clear who you're meant to be connected to and who's the right fit for you and who isn't. I am really clear with my clients. I have a video on my website that tells them this is what it takes to work with me. Like, it takes commitment. It takes courage. It takes being coachable. Like, if you're going to come to me and complain and be negative and all the things, I'll let you do that once, but like, you didn't hire me to leave you stuck there. And I always say to my client, like, okay, I really love and care about you, but now I'm about to take you behind the woodshed because we need to have a wake up moment. So really for me, it's about getting to know my clients on a level that I don't do life coaching. It's business, but certainly life plays its part in there. And so I want to understand, what are the things that have held them back in the past? What has gotten them to this level of success that now is not working for them? Why do they wish to shift? Certainly, sometimes that brings up some past traumas or that sort of thing. And I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist. However, understanding that about them, I'm able to hold them accountable to working through that, hold them accountable to not allowing those barriers to stand in their way, to eliminate the blind spots for them, and talk a lot about the purpose of a lighthouse or being anchored or sailing on a stormy sea, right? Like, it's not the weather, it's how you set your sails and kind of those things. I'm really very blessed that, and I believe it's because I've been obedient in my niche, that I don't have anybody sort of cantankerous or that tends to be negative all the time. I would like to think, looking back, that I served those clients well, and it was time for them to move on when they did.
I think it's definitely interesting because, to me, obviously, who you are right now is not who you've always been, right?
Amen.
So
Amen.
taking that reference of the lighthouse, and let's say that lighthouse becomes the beacon for you to travel back in time, and you have an opportunity to sit down with your younger self. Let's say you have an hour. When would you go back to? What would you talk about with yourself to change, to make things happen faster or happen more of an evolution of who you are now to happen at a younger age?
Yeah. First, I think it goes without saying, like, I wouldn't change anything because obviously I wouldn't be here. I would go back to myself just out of college and I would say, breathe, take a minute. What kind of life do you want to create? Instead of what kind of money do you want to make and how do you get there as fast as possible? Because that's absolutely what I did. I believe if I had done that sooner, a number of things could have happened. I would have become an entrepreneur much earlier, and I would have had, more flexibility and probably more opportunity. I think allowing that instance to breathe and sit and think may have led me to Jesus sooner. I mean, I was raised to believe in God. I just never had a personal relationship with Jesus as my savior. And that may have gone in that direction. But I think that's a piece that I've encouraged my daughters in their early 20s to not get caught up in, where do I have to be by this age? And how much money do I have to make by that age? Listen, the math is real, right? At the same time, taking a moment to really determine what you want your life to look like, I don't think we have enough time. I don't think we give ourselves enough time to do that. I think some would argue that the millennial generation does that because, they get labeled as like sort of lazy, but I don't think that's the case. I think that many of them, and certainly my daughters are, I believe, proof of that. And certainly so many other young 20 somethings, they just know what they want and they want to go after it in that way. And that's the conversation I absolutely would have had with myself at, 22.
So let's just take that age, that particular age you said at 22. Let's say there's a listener listening right now, and let's say they're relating to your ambition, they're relating to your spiritual side, and obviously they're a woman, right? What words of inspiration would you have for someone at that age to help them to understand that they're going to become someone greater than they are right now?
What you see today does not negate God's promises for you. And breathe, because the world moves. I mean, it's like a Ferris Bueller, right? The world moves fast. The world is loud. The world is chaotic. It is noisy about what success should look like. It is, just look at social media, right? Like, I want to encourage these young women that you were created for a purpose. Turn to your creator, because that is where the promise resides. And it doesn't all have to happen today, right? I think so many of them, they want what their parents have at 40 and they're 22. So yeah, what you see today does not negate God's promises for your life.
So with that being, I mean, earlier you made a reference point to, sailing a ship and being the anchor. And let's say that 22-year-old is listening right now and they want to get in contact with you.
Yeah.
Where should we send them?
Go follow me on Instagram at Erin D. Harrigan, and go to my website, erinharrigan.com. You can learn about me. You can see my podcast, my book. You can learn how to work with me. That is the hub. And once you land there and you see what's there, you'll know right away if I'm the person for you.
I think that there's definitely a true statement. I mean, it kind of, again, who your niche is, and if they find you, they'll know that you're the right person as well.
Yeah.
So just jump into some like fun bonus questions, right? So I've kind of did my due diligence and kind of realizing that you're a bit of a foodie as well, right? So, and I think one of the dishes that you particularly like that I've seen over and over again was crabs, right?
Yes.
Tacos and cheese.
Amen.
I want you to talk about these three elements. Like, I seen you light up like Christmas just now. So why do these three things make you so happy when you think about them?
Well, crabs. I mean, living in Maryland, we have crabs all summer long. It is a tradition that my mom always had a crab feast in the summer, and my siblings and I have continued that tradition for 20 years. So eating crabs is huge here in Maryland, and it's awesome. Love it. Tacos, let me tell you, like nobody cares if a taco falls apart. They still love them, right? Tacos don't talk back. Like tacos are, I believe, really, you can't please everyone because you're not a taco. So I love tacos. Tacos represent to me just fun, nourishment, home food, like just, I love a good taco. Cheese. So I've always loved cheese. The stinkier, the better. Whenever we've traveled in Europe, I'm always about, let's get some like meats and cheeses and a bottle of wine and just chill. And what's so cool is we have a local cheese shop here in the beach area where I live. And I actually work there a couple of shifts a week because I am a social person. And so much of the work I do is on Zoom, just like this. My husband is not as much of a social person, as you deduced earlier. So what working at Von Cheese allows me to do is like get my fix of social people, get my fix of working as part of a team, and it allows my brain to shut off because I create a lot of content. I do a lot of writing and everything during the day. And it allows me to turn that off and it really refreshes my brain.
Mhm.
So working there a couple of shifts a week really fills my soul. Like it's great. I make some extra money and, whatever, but it's really about the social, the team, and the brain.
Mm.
And we have so many incredible cheeses. I love good cheese. I love good red wine and tacos and crabs.
I think it's definitely interesting because I mean, you're saying that it helps you to turn your brain off, which is
Yeah.
very difficult for someone of your
Yes.
caliber and super being ambitious. So, do you think becoming an author and a podcaster kind of helps you to get the thoughts in your brain out into the world?
Absolutely. In fact, that's why I started my podcast because I was working with a coach in 2018, 2019. And the reason I hired her is because I had all of this happening in my head that Holy Spirit had given me. And I was like, I just don't know how to disseminate this. Like, where do I begin? And it began with me doing a daily Facebook Live. It then started the podcast. And then that transitioned into the book. And it does, it helps me get it all out. It's why, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but it is why I have been doing my podcast for 5 years because I absolutely love it and I can do it weekly and I can get it out of my brain. It's why I blog and it absolutely gives me the outlet for all of that because I was, as I'm sure you can tell, I was always labeled talkative on my report card. So clearly God has perfectly positioned me to do what I do.
Yeah, I think podcasters are born podcasters. It's just a matter of when you realize that that's who you are.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
So this next question, right? It's kind of a personal question, but I want you to kind of answer it with the frame of thought in mind, right?
Yeah.
If you had an opportunity to spend 24 hours with your mom, to
Mm, yeah.
first of all, what achievements would you kind of talk about with her and
Mm,
express to her like the journey that you went through to become who you are? And
yeah.
what else would you like to tell her now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I do believe she sees it all. So she wouldn't be surprised. The biggest achievements that I would talk to her about would be my marriage and that, my Brian loved her so much. She passed away in 2003 and our 10-year anniversary was in 2004. So
Mm.
definitely the longevity of marriage because we both come from divorces and multiple divorces in our parents. And then my kids, because Haley was her firstborn grandchild. And there are moments where Haley says things to me, and I swear my mom is standing behind her saying, okay, now say this, right?
Mm.
So those two achievements, huge, huge. And then, I've done what I loved, and it took me a little while to get there. There certainly were parts of my work that I loved when I was in corporate. But I remember when I was 27 and my mom was 50, and I remember saying, I just don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And she was like, I'm 50 and I don't know what I want to be when I
Wow.
grow up. So just talking to her about that and having walked out this 20 years without her, what it's meant. Because when she passed away, I was 35. My daughters were 5 and 3. I felt like I just hadn't learned enough about how to be a mom, And so to talk to her about this last 20 years and, how she believes, like how she thinks I did would be just priceless.
Mm. Yeah, I think to your point, I think obviously she's still here watching you, but just having that opportunity to kind of
Yeah.
talk to her one on one and get that feedback would definitely be something that could probably propel you into who you're becoming again, right? It's the next
Yeah,
level. So,
that's right.
so general question, like obviously you're very astute. I'm thinking that you probably read books or listen to audiobooks. Is there any books that you would like to recommend to a listener, kind of going back to what we said earlier, someone that's maybe 22 years old, that's trying to figure things out, that's highly ambitious?
Yeah. Couple of books early on that I read. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Classic. Andy Stanley, Visioneering.
Mm.
I read that. I was probably in my 30s when I read that one. And then the last one, I'm just looking at my bookcase. The last one that really has made a difference for me is called Best Year Yet by Jenny Ditzler. And I have used that book every year since 2017 at the end of the year to walk through her exercises, to review my year, to set up my next year. It is incredibly powerful. And the sooner you can start to look at your life that way, I mean, listen, we can make plans, but God directs our steps. But it allows you to understand that nothing is lost. Everything he redeems. And then projecting forward. Okay, so what would I do differently, and where do I want to focus in the new year? That, to me, those 3 books, and the Bible, of course, have been instrumental.
This is how I can tell that you are 100% a podcaster. Majority of the time when someone turns around on camera, they would not notify to say, hey, I'm turning around, that I'm looking for something.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate like your professionalism when it comes to like everything that you're doing
Thank you.
as well. So going into closing, you're a fellow podcaster. Actually, you're a senior podcaster to me. I've only been in the game 3 years and some change. You've been in the game, pretty much half a decade at this point. Boss Uncaged is now your show. You're now the host. I'm now your guest. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
Why Boss Uncaged? Like the name?
Several different reasons. So my analytical brain thinks about the character structure of Boss Uncaged, right? The first 4 letters are something that's phonetically easy for even a 5-year-old to kind of depict. And it's kind of one of those terms of endearment. Hey, boss. Hey, boss.
Yeah.
Just kind of play into it. But most people, they want to become bosses, but they're trapped. So the age part is either you're breaking out of corporate America, you're breaking out of the negative relationship, you're breaking out of whoever's holding you back, you're breaking out of all these different things to kind of move forward. And then when you put those words, those letters together, if you to transcribe them into numbers, they all fit inside a 10-digit number, which is essentially the same digits as a phone number, which is easy to remember visually.
Wow.
From the technical standpoint. So
that's amazing. That is like next level thought around that. I love that. I love that.
I definitely appreciate it. Any other questions you have?
What's next for you?
What's next for me? I just started it recently. It's kind of like you. It's like when opportunities knock. And for me, it's more so if the opportunity falls inside of Boss Uncaged.
Yes.
So I've done like the insurance thing and I've done other things before. So when those opportunities, they're knocking all the time, I just shut the doors.
That's right.
I had an opportunity to start an internet radio station.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that I was just like, well, what would it look like? I mean, obviously Boss Uncaged, we do these lives weekly. Yeah. We release an episode weekly. We're over 200 episodes. We've recorded like 400 episodes. But what would it look like to have a station that plays music and everything we're talking about in clips 24 hours a day, every day, all day? And so when that opportunity fell in my lap, I was like, this is the next level of what Boss Uncaged is going to become to be able to get to that next reach. I
love that. And I must know more because I'm telling you, like, I have a bit, I don't know why God gave me this vision, but I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be on the radio. We have an incredible Christian radio station here in Washington, D.C. area, WDTS, and I've been on their podcast Breakaway before, but I'm like, what will that look like? I'm so excited for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. It's one of those things. Is like, to your point. I mean, things happen when they're supposed to happen. If that opportunity had fell in my lap 3 years ago, I wouldn't even know what to do with it.
That's right.
No clue. But now that it fell in my lap, when I have all this amount of content and all this influence, it was like, it only makes sense.
Yes. Yes. So good.
Yep. So I definitely appreciate you today. I think you brought an element to, we always talk about stories, talk about business, talk about life, but I think the spiritual aspect that you brought in today, it wasn't preaching, but again, you can you ooze it. And someone that can resonate with that and they can hear you, I think that by default is magnetic, right? So hopefully that some listeners are listening right now will reach out to you because they may be stuck.
That's
and you
right.
may be the opportunity to open up that funnel for them to kind of show them their next steps and to grow to where they're supposed to become. So I appreciate that.
I would love that. And it's been an honor to be your guest.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I'm sure my audience does as well. Say Grant.